Kindness. We see it all around us. We see it when someone pays for someone else's coffee or holds the door open for another person. We see it in the smallest of gestures, like a smile or a kind word. But it's different when we turn on the news or social media. Oftentimes, what we hear about, what outlets are pushing, is the opposite of kind. Welcome to the Kindness Matters podcast. Our goal is to give you a place to relax, to revel in stories of people who have received or given kindness, a place to inspire and motivate each and every one of us to practice kindness every day. Hello and welcome to the Kindness Matters podcast. I am your host, Mike Rathbun. I've been playing with that a little bit. You guys, I am so psyched today because I have such an amazing guest. Her life has been, it's everything, right? I mean, the story is fantastic, and I am so honored. Today I have Maria Palmer. Maria C. Do you use the C, Maria?
I do use the C. Yeah. I use it really for my author work, not so much for my nonprofit work, but it draws me. Since my story is about my father and his last name is Costanzo, I like to use the C.
Right, absolutely. And your father was the what? The thing that not triggered, that's a bad word. No, that's a negative word. The thing that made you write a book. You are currently on a book tour right now for your book out called On the Rocks. Mm-hmm. And that book details you growing up in suburban Pittsburgh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
Yeah, so it's really the story of, what makes it unique is it's told by myself and my co-author, Ruthie Robbins, who was my former AP English teacher. And it's the rise and the fall of my father, Joseph Costanzo Jr., who during the 80s through the early 2000s had one of the premier top Italian restaurants in the nation. And it is his rise to success and very sharp fall, which ended with a stint in federal prison. And what really makes this story unique and why we've gotten a lot of critical acclaim about writing it is because we are two females and we write from the first person perspective of my father. So the entire book is in my father's voice. What we've heard from people is they feel people who know my father very well feel like it's my father sitting down at a bar and telling them stories. And that to us is the highest compliment as writers because we certainly are not my dad. We both would choose very different choices than my dad does. He's a little bit more of a risk taker, very gregarious, kind of larger than life personality. But it was fun to write him, and to be compared in that way is quite a compliment.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think that adds so much to a book when it's written in that way. It's like again, like you said, you're sitting down with the person and listening to them tell this story and this amazing story. Now, your dad, the name of the restaurant was the Prima Donna, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And they'd won a lot of awards there in Pittsburgh, and it was the it place to go, wasn't it?
It certainly was. So whenever he bought the restaurant in 1986, he bought it in this little suburb of Pittsburgh called McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, which nobody had ever heard about until last year.
I had never.
The Buffalo Bills star Damar Hamlin, whenever he collapsed on the field,
right?
He, in fact, is from McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And his mother's charity, which is a daycare center, shares the same back alleyway with the building that used to be
Oh,
the Prima Donna. So
wow.
now whenever I say McKees Rocks, people say, I've heard of that town and I don't know why. And I said, well, I think I can tell you why. So now it is put on the map a little bit more, and we're trying to keep it on the map with On the Rocks. But my point in all of this, and kind of what is a very unique piece to this story as a whole, and I think that you'll appreciate it for sure, Mike, is that during the 80s and 90s, it was a different time, right? We
Sure.
didn't
Oh,
have Yelp and restaurant reviews. It only happened through the newspaper.
right.
The Prima Donna became a destination restaurant in a town that was far from a destination. It was a place where really only locals went. And even if you were coming to Pittsburgh, this is a place that you would drive through quickly with
Right.
your windows up and your doors locked. So it was not a tourist spot at all. It was not in a major city. And I think what was mostly impossible and almost unbelievable about the story is he was able to draw those really chic New York City, San Francisco, Chicago esque type crowds and people to McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. And he bought a failing business, which was formerly a restaurant, and he turned it into what was known as the Prima Donna. So that story in itself, without anything extraneous, I think is quite unbelievable. But how he was able to draw people in and keep people coming back and to make it that destination spot that
That
people sought. That was
really speaks to his business sense.
absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely.
And now you grew up. I mean, you were 4 when your
Mhm.
dad bought the restaurant and opened it up. It wasn't called the Prima Donna before he bought it, right?
No, it was a small family restaurant. It was called Fusco's Restaurant, and a really nice gentleman, Nick Fusco, who was a professional chef, had the place, and he was going to be retiring and moving to South Carolina. And so he approached, it was a spot for us. I was only 4. My sister was 9 months at the time that my dad got into the restaurant. So whenever you have young children and you want to dine out, you're always trying to find those locations that have somewhat decent food, good prices, but are not incredibly busy, or a place where you have to wear a suit and tie because kids can be a bit unpredictable.
Not
So
stuffy.
yes, so that's why
A family
how we
place.
got to know Nick Fusco, and eventually that's who my dad bought the restaurant off of.
Wow. What's it like? I mean, what were you would probably at home doing homework or whatever after school, or
Mhm.
did you go to the restaurant?
A little bit of everything. So the very first year that the restaurant was open, my mom is not as much of a risk taker as my dad. And so she agreed that he could have the restaurant under one contingency, and that was if he kept his day job. So during the
Oh,
day, he was a postal worker and he carried mail. And then at night, he would come down and work at the restaurant. So
wow.
essentially, sleep was not plentiful or barely there. But
Yeah.
because of that, he was still at work whenever deliveries had to come in and the restaurant was getting cleaned and things were getting prepped for dinner service. So oftentimes my mom would bring my sister and I down, and we would help with little odd tasks. My sister was a baby, so she wouldn't really help with much of anything,
Right.
but I was 4, so I could do things like fill salt and pepper shakers and sometimes spill all that stuff all over the floor, which created more of a mess. And,
Yeah.
fill ketchups and just make sure
Yeah.
that every table had napkins and silverware and little odds and ends like that. So it was very much a part of my upbringing, something that I remember fondly for the most part. There was a, a
Sure.
a period of time where I kind of had this. I'm not going to say it was a rebellion because I was not at all a rebellious kid. I was kind of quite the opposite. But I did have a time where maybe I was a bit jealous of the restaurant because my dad spent so much time there. But I
Sure.
would say for the most part, the restaurant really evokes very warm memories and is very much the centerpiece of my childhood for sure.
Oh yeah, I would imagine. That's amazing. I can't imagine growing up in a restaurant type environment. I mean, obviously, when I was old enough to work, that was my first job, right? It was bus boy. Do they even
Mhm.
have bus boys? I don't even know if
Yeah,
they can say
no,
bus
yeah,
person probably now,
bus
right?
person, yeah, bus person, server.
And it was my dad ended up getting me the job. He worked for Northwest Airlines in the town that I grew up in, and he knew the guy who ran there were two restaurants in the airport. There was a coffee shop, and then there was a more of a fine dining, as fine dining as you get in Billings, Montana in 1976. But um, and I worked there as a bus person, but we were also responsible for washing the dishes, right? And we had the dish,
Mhm.
pull the handle down and it goes in, and we would have to take care of all of the trays that came in off of the flights during the day.
Oh,
You
wow.
would be surprised at how many people didn't drink their wine
Huh.
and left full bottles. Well, full bottles. I mean, the little
Yeah.
bottles of wine, and you know where those went.
Oh, yeah. You made your dishwashing shift a bit
That
more
was a
fun,
little
right?
perk.
Yeah, right?
It's like
Yeah,
that
people
was
don't
not in the benefits package.
no, but people don't realize that, dishwashers and bus people really are the backbones of the industry.
Oh, sure.
You cannot survive, especially if you're a busy restaurant, you can't survive without either one. So,
Yeah.
I think that that was one of the differentiating factors too at the Prima Donna is that my dad understood as a manager that every part is just as equally important to success. So he had a couple of people that had second jobs as bus people, dishwashers,
Yeah.
and they took almost more pride in their job at the Prima Donna than they did in their regular career, as social workers or nonprofit type folk, because they just felt overly appreciated for the job that they were doing. So,
Oh, sure. Hey, okay. Because I have the mind of a golden retriever puppy. Have you seen the TV show The Bear?
goodness.
Oh no.
So, the short answer on that is no. And I'm so upset because I do not have Hulu. And you would think that I would have one friend or family member that has it. Nobody has it. So I'm trying to leverage to find some more friends so I can watch this. I know that this is going to be right up my alley. 100%. I've heard all about it. I've read the reviews. I love that it kind of incorporates the industry with music and it gives from what I've read, it really gives the real heart of what it means to be part of the restaurant industry without any sugarcoating.
Oh,
And
for sure.
that is something that I really not only I want to watch, I need to watch. So, thank you for reminding me of that.
You're very welcome. Thank you for reminding me I don't have Hulu. Might.
Yeah,
No, but
someday.
there was
Gotta sell some more books.
there's a part in the second season where the main character's brother, who was also part owner in the Bear, um, he sends him to this fancy restaurant, and when the guy goes, he thinks it's menial, it's beneath
Mhm.
him, and they have him polishing forks for the dinner service, and he thinks it's horrible, and but every morning he makes himself go in and do that, and it's like a month, I think, and at the end of it, he has such a sense of service because of that task. And he brings it anyway. I don't want to spoil anything. Spoiler alert. But yeah, Very good. And everything I've read about it, I've read the reviews from people who would know from the restaurant business. Because I wouldn't. But yeah, it's very true to the story. Okay, let's get this back on track, shall we?
Yeah, no, I like this. I want to bring up one more piece about that before
Yeah.
we get back on track. I think, the beauty in all of that and that story that you just told is that people have to feel like they're part of something greater. And sometimes doing those small menial tasks, although they're small and menial,
Yeah.
they're part of the larger picture. And so, it's almost a Saturday night at the Prima Donna would always start with a roll call, and it would always start saying, bus people, are you ready? Servers, are you ready?
Nice.
Cooks, are you ready? Because everybody had to get themselves in the zone. And so, those tasks like polishing silverware, that
Yeah.
helps to center you and, like you said, prepare you for higher levels of service, because you're going to now notice something. If a fork goes out and it's got a spot on it, you're going to say, oh, somebody could have done a better job. I
Yep.
know how to do a better job. So
Exactly. And
brings
yeah,
things to light.
because
Anyway, sorry.
you think, he was kind of like co-owner of the place, and his brother, played brilliantly by Jeremy Allen White, sends him off to do this, and he's like, at first he was like, I'm better than this. I don't need to do this. I don't need to know how to do this. But he saw how it all came together in the end. And
Mhm.
it was brilliant. But anyway,
Okay, now getting back on track.
so so you grow up, you all through your school years, you're in this restaurant, and then you go to college,
Mhm.
and something happens to your dad.
Yeah. So, I had the absolute pleasure of growing up in the restaurant right beside my dad. I learned from a very young age that whenever you work in the restaurant, you don't have much time off. So, what did I do? As soon as I was old enough, I started working, not just filling salt and pepper shakers, but actually working at the restaurant. I
Front of the
started
house.
also as a bus person. That was my
Oh,
very first job. Whenever I came in, I told my dad, I want to do your job. And he said, no, you're going to work from the bottom up. And so that's what I did. I started as a bus person for a few years, and then eventually segued into becoming a server, which is really where I like to stay. And I worked there all through high school, all through college, on breaks. And one summer, I always used to joke around and say that, I could never sit still. I had 2 or 3 internships. I was studying broadcast journalism in public relations at Syracuse University. And so over the summer, this particular summer, which was the summer after my junior year, I was working at an advertising agency. I was working at a radio station as an intern. I was a lifeguard. And then in the evenings, I would work for my dad.
holy
And,
cow.
whenever he needed me, I'd come down. So
Sure.
the one day I was in between shifts, I think I was in between lifeguarding and going down to the restaurant. And there was a knock on my door, and I answered it very unassumingly. And I found a few men in suits who turned out to be the federal government looking for my father.
Oh
And it
no.
was at that moment that our lives really shifted, and we went from being the family that everybody looked up to the family that was being investigated. And that investigation that really started from a federal grand jury investigation where somebody had mentioned my father's name in order to basically be given a get out of jail free pass.
Oh,
Um, this spun a very intensive 3-year investigation, which ended with my father pleading guilty to federal tax evasion charges and spending 5 months in the correctional facility across the street from where Martha Stewart was at the time. They actually served during the same same time, same
Oh, wow.
year. She was at Alderson, women's prison in West Virginia, and my dad was at the Federal Corrections Facility for Men, which was right across the street in West Virginia. And so it's always the joke that, these two food greats served at the same time,
Just across the street. Yep.
and just across the street. So, it was a hard life lesson to learn. And, what was really sad is if it happened today, that wouldn't have been the outcome, because
Probably not.
at the time there were these federal mandates, which worked as a grid. So if you evaded X number of dollars of tax for, X amount of time, this was your sentence. Right after my dad, I think he was still in prison at the time. This was under the Clinton administration.
Okay.
These were all found unconstitutional. So now there is no more federal mandatory guidelines. So it's taken case by case. And this would likely have ended in a civil way had this had happened
Maybe
today.
probation or, yeah.
Yeah. Or,
He
he
might
was
have even been
willing.
able to still run the restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he was willing. He tried to do an offer and compromise to pay the government back. And we're talking a very nominal amount of money, like over the time that he was in business, which was a 17-year period, less than $10,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
So he was not he was not the big fish that they were hoping.
We're not talking Al Capone here.
No.
Not even close.
He was very small potatoes, or, sticking with the theme, very small meatballs. But, hey, you live and you learn. And the one thing that my dad has always taught me is that you go through life with grace and gratitude, and you accept things that you cannot change, and you do it with dignity. And that's what he did. He admitted that he was wrong. He served his time, and he did what he needed to do. And, we're now able to have a story written about it. And I always joke to him and say, hey, if the people that mentioned your name in the federal grand jury investigation hadn't, you would not have a best-selling book, because every book needs a hook, and your hook happens to be that your restaurant empire ended with a stint in federal prison. So I said, one day we will understand why this all happened. Not that we would ever want to go through it again, but it certainly did make for a pretty fantastic story.
Wow. Yeah. And now you're a best-selling author because of it. Thanks, Dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And he gets to now go on a media tour, and he's all over the book too.
Is he going on with all the book signings?
Yeah, he goes. He's limited. He's a 2-time kidney transplant recipient, so his scope as far as where he can travel is a bit limited with his health challenges. But he's all over Pittsburgh, so any event that we have in Pittsburgh, he'll be traveling with me. We're going to be at a Barnes & Noble in Cranberry, PA on Saturday from 12 to 2, and he will be with me there.
Nice.
He does Zoom. He does radio shows. He's done a little TV. So, yeah, he's all over the place.
Wow.
He's living life.
Good for him. Awesome.
Yes.
But now, so this experience kind of led you to your first nonprofit experience. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, for sure.
It was with an organization called Get on the Bus. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, at the time, kind of picking up the pieces from that iconic knock on my door, we were all shocked about what had happened. We could not believe that this was coming down in the way that it was.
Yeah.
And that my father was going to be serving some time in prison, and there was really nothing that any of us could do about it. And so I was going to be graduating from college and moving to Los Angeles with my then boyfriend, now husband. And I thought, Los Angeles is a long way away from Pittsburgh. So if I leave Pittsburgh, then my problems don't go with me. They just stay, right?
Yeah.
Like I go from Pittsburgh and as soon as I get on the plane, they're there and I'm in LA. And, as I know now, that's certainly not what happened. So they came with me and I had a lot of trouble that first year in LA, not only just adjusting to LA, but really coming to grips with the fact that my father was in prison. My life had changed so much. We certainly struggled whenever he was trying to get into the restaurant industry, but then we really lived a wonderful, awesome life with lots of celebrities. And, I had a really robust childhood and it was all taken away. We lost everything, our
Yeah.
house, everything that we had worked for. He lost the restaurant. So, um, everything had changed overnight and that was hard for me to absorb. And so my then boyfriend was looking for some local churches to go to in the LA area. And there was one in particular that was having a presentation from a Catholic nun who had started an organization called Get on the Bus to bring children at the time just to visit their incarcerated mothers for Mother's Day. And
Oh,
so he encouraged me to go to that presentation, even though I really didn't want to and just wasn't, in the mental mood to do so.
sure.
And I went, and what I had expected, because I was a former Catholic myself, and what I had expected this nun to look like and to be like was just totally different. She was spunky and she swore and she smoked and she gambled and she was just like the life of the party,
Yeah.
toenails matched her
Not
fingernails,
exactly what you
red
would picture when you
heels.
picture a Catholic nun.
No, 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 no. She was like amazing, just total spitfire. And
Sure.
so I listened to what she had to say in the presentation, and she talked about how she started to get on the bus, and it started really, she was trying to bring a delegation of Catholic women to go visit the women in Chowchilla Women's Prison, which is about 5 hours north of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And she went around the circle with all of these incarcerated women and said, um, aren't you so excited? You're going to have visitors. And the women had said, well, it's wonderful. We're glad we're getting visitors. We never get visitors, but why are we going to have people that we don't even know come and visit us whenever we don't even see our own children? And as she went around the circle, she asked, how long has it been since you saw your kids? The minimum time frame was 4 years. The
Oh.
maximum time frame was 17 years. So she
Oh.
knew right then and there that she needed to bring the first bus from Los Angeles to Chowchilla women's prisons in Northern California. And that's really how Get on the Bus was born. And it has really grown from there. But hearing those stories, I waited afterwards to introduce myself to her, and I was not public at the time about my story. It was just way too close to home, and everything had happened so soon with no time to
Sure.
process. And there's something about her, still to this day. I always joke around. I say, "You are the female version of my dad." Same personality, same, we're going to just get this done. We don't care how we're going to get it done. We'll figure it out and we'll apologize to whoever we need to apologize to later. But, very heart of gold, but no nonsense. A woman that knows how to make things happen in life. And
Sure.
I just felt very comfortable with her. I shared with her what was going on with me. We had exchanged information, and then she never called me. And years later, I ended up contacting her because I went and did my master's degree at Pepperdine University, and I needed to have a senior thesis. And I'll never forget the first time that I called her and she picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, I don't know if you're going to remember me, but this is how you might." And she said, "Is this Maria? My Maria that I've been searching
Oh.
for the past 2 years?" Yep. That's me.
Oh, and
And
she's
it
been
was
looking for you.
Yeah, and it was then that, I started to volunteer, for her. Um, she loved having me tag along because she said, "I can take you to Beverly Hills and people can relate to you. I can take you to South Central Los Angeles and people can relate to you."
Sure.
Um, and, you know, it was through that process that I started to have my own healing. And eventually I became the director on a fluke because the former director quit and there was really nobody else. And so she said,
Congratulations, you've got the job.
exactly, at a gas station, she said, "I'm not really worried about it because I have somebody else in mind for this job." And I said, "Who?" And she said, "You." I said, "Oh, no, I can't do that. I'm only 20 years old, just out of college. This is a job for somebody much more senior. It's running the entire state of California." And she said, "No, you can do it. It'll be easy." And nothing in life is
Of
ever
course,
easy, but
she'd say that.
it was a good thing to tell somebody that was younger. And so,
Sure.
that's how I connected with that organization. And really that's what started out my entire career in the nonprofit field, which I'm
Right.
still in today.
Exactly. Now you are now a grant writer?
hmm I'm a grant writer with the St. Paul's Community Development Corporation in Paterson, New Jersey, which, interestingly enough, is very similar in demographics to McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania,
Oh.
where the prima donna once sat.
Mhm.
And really, we do things to give people a hand up and not a handout. So we work on issues related to food security. We have a food pantry that serves about 3,000 people per
Oh,
year.
wow.
And I think maybe 7 or 8 now full service community schools within the city of Paterson. We have a permanent residence for 5 single women without children. We have
Oh,
a
wow.
men's shelter that has capacity for 30 men who live barrack style, actually 40 men, but we have normally about 30 that are there at one particular time. They live barrack style with us. They work or go to school during the day, and then we provide them with free meals and support in social services and other avenues. We have a workforce development training program, which focuses on culinary skills and construction skills. That also has a spin-off Breaking the Cycle program, which helps people who are coming out of probation and parole. We have an AmeriCorps program, which is, a federal program that gets not only just young people, but we get a lot of retired folk as well.
What are you looking at me like that for, Maria?
Who really, serve within the community, not only just within our organization, but we also farm our AmeriCorps members out to other organizations
Oh.
within the county. So we're the lead agency for that. We also have 2 full service community schools, which one is an elementary and the other is a middle school, and they feed into one another. And basically the model of that, I like to call it the Google for schools. So we
Oh.
bring programs and services inside the schools. So things like parenting and healthcare. So instead of kids missing a day of school to go to the doctor, we have a pediatrician and doctors that can service the whole
Oh.
family. And also mental health is a big part of that too.
Yeah.
So we do have that component as well. I'm trying to think if we have other
That's so
things.
much for one organization.
It is so much for one organization. I should ask my boss for a raise.
Well, I
No.
mean, because
And we
you see
also,
these nonprofits and they'll do this,
yeah,
and then another one will do that. But you're handling like the job of 16 nonprofits.
yes, we do a lot. And then, most importantly and closest to my heart, there are 2 programs that I personally watch over in addition to my grant writing work. And um, the first one is our Adopt a Family Holiday Gift Program, which actually I just started up again on Monday. And we service about 200 to 300 children in Paterson and Passaic County per year. I have about 1,000 to 1,400 gifts that we collect throughout the months of October and November, and we wrap everything up based upon kids' wish list and distribute them the middle of December, right in
Nice.
time for Santa time.
So yeah, that's right. You said because I wanted to get this line out. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
Yeah,
apologize.
no, that's okay.
You said your basement becomes Santa's workshop.
My basement does become Santa's workshop. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty cool for my kids. They love it.
Now, how old are your kids?
I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. So,
Okay.
they really get to see the magic of Christmas kind of right before
Yeah.
their eyes, which is fun.
And
And
none of it's
then,
for them.
yeah. And then I also, my other little passion project is I operate a service night here in Northern New Jersey once a month on the third Friday of every month. We meet up at 6:30 p.m. and we make 60 lunches for the men at the shelter, and then we enjoy a pizza dinner together, and we talk about service, and it's been quite cool. My partner and I
Wow.
started this little venture because we thought after the pandemic, people were really looking for opportunities to connect, and especially through service. And so it's become a very cool intergenerational. I've had kids as young as 2 and 3 come, and they'll help
Oh
decorate
wow.
the lunch bags, with crayons
That's
and
cool.
suns and all kinds of cool things and stars. And I've had people upwards into their 90s who will come, and they'll, help. We On our sandwich line, we align every sandwich with a piece of foil and a piece of wax paper. And some of my older folks love kind of sitting and making sure that that's all taken care of in the correct way. They have a
You
certain
folded it
system.
wrong.
Exactly. So, everybody bends in very well. But I think one of the most touching pieces of that program is last year we had a group of high school students that kept on coming back every month, which I just think is so cool because out
Yeah.
of all the ways that they could spend a Friday evening, they're spending it with me doing service. And it was the homecoming dance, I think, or no, it was a spring dance. So whatever that was, maybe prom, because I think
Okay.
homecoming's in the fall. And it was the prom. And I thought for sure, it would be a very light night for high schoolers. And all these kids showed up. And I said, well, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at the prom. And they said, well, we were given a choice. And our parents said, you can go to the prom or you can go to service night. And you choose the one place that you think is going to be something that you would, look back and A, not regret missing, and B, something that you could learn from or, grab something that you could take with for the rest of your life.
Right.
And, probably get emotional here because I just thought it was so beautiful. They
That
all
is so
they all
cool.
came to service night and they all said, we feel like we would learn more and get more from, doing service than being at the prom. And I thought,
Oh
geez,
wow.
you
That's
sometimes,
so
with this younger generation, and I do it too, you sometimes think, oh, do they really care? Or, are we going to be able
yeah.
to entrust these folks with our future? And
That gives me hope.
yes, there are some good ones out there. And, this group of kids in particular is just so loyal to the cause. And, I told them, I said, quite honestly, I don't know that I would have chosen the way that you chose whenever I was 18 years old. I really don't
Yeah.
think that I would. But, the fact that you're getting this at such a young age and you're getting so much from this, it keeps me wanting to come back here every month, and give more time to this. And,
For sure. Oh
so
wow. No, seriously, that story gives me so much hope for our future
yeah. Oh, me too. Me too.
because I'm sure
Some
they're
big
not the only
eggs.
ones. There's
Yeah.
probably kids in other towns or cities that
Hmm.
would choose the same thing, and that makes me
Yes.
nice.
Yeah.
I could sit and listen to you, Maria, talk for hours.
Thank
J-
you.
you are truly a fantastic storyteller, and you're a fantastic person, even more than that.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
Um,
Right back at you. I really appreciate you having me as a guest on your show. And, I've enjoyed telling some stories with you today.
it's just so if you ever come out on a book signing tour to Minneapolis, let me know. I'll be there.
Oh, I certainly will. I certainly will, for
But I hope
sure.
you don't have to.
You know what? I hope that I do. And I'm starting in 2024. Really, 2023, I was very much in my comfort zone in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, New York area. But
Yeah.
in 2024, I've been starting to get some inquiries from a little north of Providence, Rhode Island,
Oh.
Charleston, South Carolina,
Oh.
Northern Virginia,
Charleston in
California.
winter would be nice.
Exactly. So, Minneapolis is not completely off of the radar, but, got to
Okay.
make it a useful trip. So, I'll keep you in the loop for sure about that.
Well, Maria, thanks so much for being here. The book is again On the Rocks,
On the Rocks. Yep. The
and we
Prima
will
Donna
have all the
story.
links. I'm guessing Amazon.
Yep, it's on Amazon. It's really wherever books are sold. People can also go to my website, which is Maria C. Palmer, PALMER.com. And at the bottom of that page, on the front page, it is all the vendors of how you can purchase the book. And on the bottom of that page, you can certainly sign up for my newsletter and you get a free audio cooking class. I keep everybody in the loop about where I'm touring to, what amazing shows I'm going to be part of, like the Kindness Matters podcast. And I
You
certainly also post all of my links to any media that I've been on that page too. So, Mike, as soon as your episode comes out, that link will be posted right onto my
awesome.
website. It'll be sent to my newsletter. It'll be on social media because I do believe in lifting people up who have given me a chance and helped to lift me up too.
Now you're going to make me cry. Stop it. Yes, that link to your website will be in the show notes as well. So thank you
Fabulous.
so much. I
Thank
appreciate it, Maria.
you.
You have a
Thank you, Mike.
fantastic rest of your week.
All right. You too. Thanks so much. It was honestly my pleasure. Thank you.
It was so fantastic to have Maria C. Palmer on the show. This was an amazing episode. I took away so much from it. I hope you get just as much out of it. Coming from a service background, and she took that and just ran with it and has been serving for the rest of her life, basically. So inspiring. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be back again next week with another episode. But until then, be that person who roots for others, who tells a stranger that they look amazing, and encourages others to believe in themselves and their dreams. You have been listening to the Kindness Matters podcast. I am your host, Mike Rathbun. Have a fantastic week.